So then, as you can kind of see, so I will be your moderator for today, and DC, Jackie, and I will all be answering the questions. That's kind of how we're going to structure it. And just a little bit of housekeeping. We will have Q&A at the end, and so you're welcome to put them in the chat throughout, but we're going to save time and answer those questions at the end of the presentation, so you're also welcome to save them for that time. So we are going to get into it, but I want to hear from you all in the chat. If you could just put what your event superpower is, we're going to call some of those out as we talk. So please put that in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And today we are talking all about maximizing your impact and basically making more money at your fundraising event. And so we're going to really get all in about event revenue today and really provide some tips and tricks that will help you maximize that in your events. And so we wanted to kind of show you, this is the agenda. These are all of the points we're going to go through. We've broken it down into basically like 6 steps. And so we're going to be talking about defining your goals, focusing on relationships, mission moments, technology, income, post-event stewardship. So we're going to cover all of that today. And so we will go ahead and get into it by starting with defining your clear goals. And since I'm already talking, I'm just going to keep talking and cover this one. So why is it actually important to define clear goals, and how can it lead to making more money? So I'm excited to talk about this. I really love Fundraising 101 for events and kind of where do you start. And so I was excited to take this one. So I'm sure you've heard people talk about goal setting like all the time. And so please stick with me. It's still something important that we have to talk about. And that unfortunately, I think all of us see a lot of organizations still skip past this a little bit. So I want to share a few steps before just to kind of define your event goals. And so we want to make sure that your goals and events are part of the overall fundraising plan. And that's something that we might be able to help you with to an extent. Sometimes you can have, internal folks or even fundraising consultants kind of help you with your overall fundraising plan in general. But there are many times when I'm personally working with an organization, and I learned very early on that some key fundraising strategic conversations just haven't really been taking place. And so by the time we get to an event, it's almost like we do need to backstep a little bit to make sure their event is successful and that it's worth the return on investment, which is basically what we're talking about today. So my first little caveat is just to make sure events fit into your fundraising plan. And then from there, you're going to decide if you should even have a fundraising event. And this is part of defining your goals. And so look at your return on investment for past events, look at attendee surveys, things like that, and see what feedback you've been given and decide if it's time to shake it up, if you need to do a new event, or you just continue on with the tradition, but make sure you're allowing time for that conversation. And I just want to say this, you also need to consider staff time when planning your event, and all of these things will help you determine if you should have one. So once you've decided to have one, you need to decide if it's going to be a friend-raiser or a fundraiser. So is the goal to make money? Is it to build awareness? Maybe it's both, maybe it's education, but you need to talk about kind of what the intent is of the event. And a good example of this is I was working with a client, and they basically stopped doing a program that was really well known in the community. And so there was lots of negative community pushback because they were wondering why this stopped. And so at the same time, they were trying to plan, I believe it was a luncheon. And so they kind of stopped, and they're like, okay, we actually need to kind of like pick up the pieces from the situation. And instead of asking for money right now, we need to educate them on why we've stopped this program and what we still offer that's valuable. And so they changed it to more of like a community event, come like and learn, and just interact with different booths that had to do with the services that they were providing and the people that were staffing those services, and come and meet and greet them. And so they really shifted gears, but it was kind of essential given the circumstances that they were working under. So that's an example for that. And so with all that in mind, now we're finally at the step where you can define your actual goals. And so that's the like starting with your why, that's your North Star, and all of those wonderful things. And so there's an activity that I love to do, and I put a screenshot of it here on the screen. In one of your first initial meetings for the event, something that could be great is to have the key stakeholders be there. Maybe that's the committee, it's the some board members, it's key staff, and you're having basically an open conversation about what success looks like to them for the event. And that's on an individual basis. So I would say, DC, like, what does success look like for you from this event personally? And we go around and kind of hear from everyone. And that's something that you can take notes on, that you can compile, and you could put them at the top of agendas from there on out. Every single meeting, like, is in this screenshot here. And that's super amazing, because if you have to look at them every single time you're meeting, you're probably more likely to remember them, and that helps you make your decisions. And especially if your goal is to make more money, like we're talking about today, I would say that's an essential tip. So those are my suggestions on how we can define clear goals. And another way that you can also make more money on your events is by focusing on the relationships. And so, DC, how can building strong long-term relationships with nonprofit organizations and their stakeholders, like we were talking about, enhance the success and financial impact of event fundraisers?
Thank you, Mary. And I really love what you just said about putting the goals on the top of each agenda. I'm going to use that.
I wrote that down. I'm using that from now on. We learn from each other all the time too.
Always. I literally just put that in the chat as well, so it's saved. Maybe I should pin it as a goal for the goal.
So a few ways that building those relationships can benefit the financial impact of your fundraisers. I have a few different ideas and a couple examples of that I've used. So one is doing this helps to increase trust and collaborations with your stakeholders. When people who believe in your organization, they trust where the organization is going, they trust the mission, and they advocate for the cause, which also helps with the bottom line, because then those folks become your ambassadors and they're reaching out to other people and sharing, what they love about your organization. And these folks can be contributors in any form. I have an organization that does an event every year. And because the people who are part of the mission and the supporters are so invested in this organization, they have hundreds of people who come out to help volunteer for this organization. A lot of people don't have that, and volunteers are really the lifeline to organizations. And so this particular organization, the folks will start asking when they can volunteer, when they can come, when they can show up, months before the date is even announced, just because they know and they trust in this mission so much. And and like I said, they've become advocates for the cause. Building these relationships for not only the supporters, but for the staff and the people that are invested will help eliminate some of that turnover that some organizations see, especially right now. And so, these are all really important ways to build that community and that success that impact the bottom line for the fundraisers. Another thing that happens that I do anyway is, because of one particular event that I do that is actually a community-based event, the city gets behind it. And so when the city gets behind something, that's a lot of in-kind donations that I don't have to pay for, the organization is not paying for out of their bottom line. And so when you build that trust and you build that loyalty and you build that awareness, more and more people want to get behind you and support you, which in turn helps with the bottom line for your organization when it comes to being able to do the mission and providing that support that you have and that you need in your community. So.
I love that. Thank you, DC. And I have a follow-up question for you that just popped in my mind, because I don't know if you've experienced this, so let us know. But sometimes I think key stakeholders at an event, I'm thinking like maybe like a key board member, maybe like a key committee chair or something like that. They really love the idea of something at the event that actually doesn't make sense, or it costs a lot of money and that really doesn't make sense. So I'm sure you've experienced this. What advice do you have, especially because that impacts the bottom line of the event when you're dealing with key stakeholders in this situation?
Yeah, I think when you have someone like that, you really have to get back to what the mission is. You have to, everyone would love to have someone walking in on stilts and, throwing confetti, but does that really jive with what your mission is? And is that really going to help with getting people to, want to support your organization? Um, and I think just really focusing back in on the why, it's always about the why. Is it, throwing the biggest party, or is it just like you said earlier, is it building more brand awareness and building, having that fundraiser to bring more stakeholders or more people in to support what it is you're doing. So, trying to keep people on track and trying to keep folks in line with what it is we're trying to do. I mean, I had a person who, said to me once, we have to get more stuff because we have to sell more things so people will want to come. And I'm like, okay, hold on. It's not about the stuff. It's about the mission. So let's back it up and remember why we're really here. It's not a yard sale. It's nothing like that. It's really to come in, support, build that awareness and, have something that's going to be sustainable for your own organization for not only now, but for the future. Thank you,
Deci. That was awesome. That was a little mic drop there, and I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to move on to our next tips section, which is creating mission moments during your event. And this is certainly a way that your event can make more money. And Deci was just mentioning this, so it's the perfect transition. But we thought it would be fun to share with each of you some examples on how we each have seen this happen at events. And we'd also love to hear your thoughts and examples. So if you have them, please put them in the chat. But Jackie, what's a way that you have created or seen a nonprofit create a mission-centric moment at an event?
And I definitely like to add on to Deci's comments earlier about like it is about the mission. And even though you want to create this amazing party and all of these Instagrammable moments, at the end of the day, that's really not what it's about. So the way that we like to really make sure that we're tying that in is just high quality conversations, examples, success stories. If, like, for example, we create a video just to highlight what your mission is, or some of the great work you've done that year, really invest the time and energy in creating something that is going to be meaningful to your audience. Sort of, we like to call it the tug at your heartstrings. And an opportunity to celebrate success and then show how much more there is to do and how people can get involved. Then to take that video component, which again, you can use that asset. I mean, it's worth investing the money in because you can use that asset at many other events or on your website and things like that, and do clips. And then tie it into someone who is a success story, bring a human element in the room to talk about how that organization has impacted their lives or made their life better. It could be a volunteer, it could be a recipient of a grant, or treatment from the hospital, someone that was able to attend the school because of a scholarship opportunity, and that really changed the way they viewed life, or just was able to move forward. So I think really bringing a human element in, and then you can move on to your fundraising goal. Setting it all up together to really be clear about the why is going to make the event more successful. So that's just my example. I like to make sure that's incorporated.
Wonderful. Deci, what would you add to that with your examples?
I have no examples right now. Why don't you go, Mary, and then I'll think about that.
I'll go. I put you on the spot. Yes. Okay. No, I'm sure you have plenty of examples. So you got something in there. So yeah, I mean, I love what Jackie said, and there's lots of different ways that this can be incorporated. So one thing that I've seen before as an example is, you have your traditional photo booth, which in my hot take opinion, I think photo booths are dead. I think people don't really care about them that much anymore. And maybe you could argue a 360 photo booth might still be kicking it. But one thing that I've seen is there was an organization that was focused on firefighters and supporting them. And they did a photo booth where they had folks put on the uniform, at least put on the coat, or hold the hose, or put on the hat. And it was heavy. And so it was kind of showing them what that was like a little bit, just barely. And so it was a moment that it made that photo booth mission centric all of a sudden, because they were connecting with oh, wow, what is this actually like? That to me is a very simple idea. It works maybe for some audiences, maybe not others. But that was an example of keeping it mission centric. And then one other thing that I was thinking as well is in your program, because content is obviously like critical to tying your mission in, kind of like Jackie was saying. That is where you can really incorporate your mission. But a great thing to do is to get attendees to be able to connect about the mission once they're seated at their table, if your time allows. One thing that we've done is to have table like people at your table talk for, I don't know, 3 minutes, and like the MC will kind of introduce this moment at the beginning, and they are supposed to share like some prompt, like what the organization means to them, why the mission's important, or maybe some more specific question. But that gets them talking together at their table, and for those that have experiences with that mission, they can share it, somebody else can hear it and connect, because not everybody there might have an experience with the mission, but it gives them an opportunity to kind of hear from their table mates why they're there and why the event is important to them, not just the people on the stage, but the people sitting at the tables in the room. And so there's lots of things that you can do. Those are just 2 examples. So DC.
Well, I have an example now. Yes. I've remembered. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So one of the things that we know that not everyone has the ability to not only attend, buy a ticket, attend an event, and then, be asked to give money to help support the event. And so one of the things that I've seen happening is, instead of people donating dollars, they're donating time. And so the Raise the Paddle will actually have a part that says, hey, who wants to raise their paddle to donate, 2 hours of volunteer time to our organization. And so, time is money. And, if for someone who really doesn't have the funds to be able to give, they can give their time to support this organization that they care about so much. And so that's one way that I've seen organizations, back to focusing on the actual mission. And you would not believe how many people raise their paddle to give their time. It's amazing. And so that's one thing that I've seen that's really cool.
That's awesome.
I've never seen that. Share one too, if you'd like.
Please.
I was talking to the fabulous people over at Parasport Spokane, and they're all athletes that have injuries or some sort of disability of some sort. And these people are phenomenal, and they all wear red all the time, and it's become their indelible image of a red herd. And so that's their signature color. When they travel, they're all in red together. When they're in the airports, you see this massive group. They call themselves the Red Herd. But what's really interesting, when they do their event fundraiser, they have an athlete at every single table, so that the people at the table enjoying the event can actually talk to somebody that's receiving those services at that time. And that story always sticks with me, and I love sharing that in this context.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they get the opportunity to sit and actually hear from the people that, this organization is impacting too. So, okay. That's another note. Thanks.
Make a lot of notes.
We're all learning from each other, which is awesome.
It is.
All right. Well, if you are listening to this and you have other ideas, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear your mission moments that you've seen. But we are going to move on to our next step about making more money at your fundraising event. And this other component is leveraging technology and leveraging all of your resources. So, Jackie, what resources do you leverage to create an effective planning process and successful event?
Well, I think part of it is there are a lot of different applications. You can use a lot of different technologies. And when you think about technology, obviously, we're here at Octria, and it is great to use, because when we have clients that don't use something like Octria, it just makes things a little more difficult. But anyway, we are all here to help educate folks on the easier way to do things. But there are a lot of different technologies that I like to personally leverage, just because being busy, sometimes you get a mental block, or like, okay, what's the next message, or like, how do we fine tune it? So the first obvious one for me is ChatGPT. I've been using it for a long time as far as creating content that is going to be helpful, whether it's on the website, marketing materials for an event, maybe a mini blog or a newsletter that you want to send out, because you can take your thoughts and concepts and you're not spending tons of time trying to wordsmith it exactly the way you want. I mean, I've seen some ones where we were working on an event description, like a little activity, and I write in, this is what the activity is. And then there are buttons that just say like, make it more fun, make it longer, make it shorter, make it sound more professional, make it sound exciting, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, I didn't have to sit there for 30 minutes waiting for the coffee to kick in and trying to figure out the best way to word it. And then it makes all of that content, it just gels together better. The voice sounds consistent, which is a really good one. So I love using that all the time. And again, you edit it and you can change it, but it just gives you that starting point to just kind of create something. The other one I love to use, and I know a lot of people do, is Canva. I don't know what I would do without Canva. Or like when I started event planning, 25 plus years ago, there was none of these things. So like, I know the hard way to do it, the old way, where you didn't have any of this stuff. So it made just even trying to come up with a design or flyers or things like that a lot more challenging, or you need to bring in a graphic designer. That could be really expensive. So that is one that we leverage for even designing bid cards, all the little inserts that go in your bidder packets, your programs and everything. And then you've just got that and you can update it year after year, have your team collaborate on it, especially like we've got one where we've got an event coming up and the organization had an intern go in and make their program this year. And that's a great experience for them. And it saves a lot of time and energy and expense as well. So Canva, we use Canva Pro because you can get a lot more team members involved. So depending on your organization, you could go with like the cheap or free version, or you might want to actually pay for Canva Pro. The other one that I think is helpful, and again, some of these are built into like a Chat GPT or an OpenAI, other kind of AI software, or Canva has a little bit too, is video editing. And so I put that little picture up here. Before, video editing used to be like the hardest thing ever. You had to hire someone. It costs a lot of money. Just like old days when like someone had to like program your website. Now you could actually build it yourself. Video editing is something to spend some time on. And it may not be you. Again, volunteers are great with this. Just to kind of take maybe a video you already made and like chop it up into smaller segments that you can put it out on your social media. You can include it on your fundraiser event website and things like that. And then you can also create short interview segments. There's like, I have a whole list of things that we use to create video content that we put out on social, on our YouTube channel and things like that, just to have some blurbs and have some more interaction versus just a lot of text. So just mixing up the media is really important. And then the other thing is payment technology. Right now, if you're using Octria, it's really, really easy, especially like you can just tap your phone now. I just learned this morning, which is great, to check people out. There's not like the swiper with the long black cord and everything's getting tangled. We've all seen that with volunteers, and then you reboot and it's not working and you have to type it in by hand. There are a lot of great ways to do that. Like, so you have that, but we also, if an organization is not using Octria, or they have a different type of format where they don't need that much, and I wouldn't recommend it. I think always go with Octria, but you can use a payment processor like PayPal or Stripe or any of those types of things to collect your donations at the end. So just be open-minded, like what's a great way for us to make sure that it's a seamless and easy transition for when our guests arrive and how they're greeted, and that it's not a tech glitch that slows the whole thing down, the lines are long, but in fact, it's something that just makes everything even more smoothly from beginning to end. So those are just a few that I use all the time. I'm sure there are more that I didn't put in my list, but it's really important.
Can I add one to that? Yeah. I would love to add, and Jackie, you're the one who actually told me about this, which is Octria Launch. I have saved so much time and so much energy having your team help us get that website together. Just here you go and take it over. It's an amazing thing. So thank you.
Yeah. And to like be like, I would never do an event in Octria ever. Without Launch. And in fact, I've had to talk some clients into being like, no, I will pay for launch. You don't have to pay for launch.
Exactly.
I will pay for launch because it makes my life so much better. So just like there are resources out there, there are experts in all of these different things, and just make sure you use it. But I will never do a project in Ontario without the launch team. They're just great. So that's an awesome one, DC.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned, when you were mentioning Canva, one thing that I found that I like to use them for is for escort cards, and they're also called something else. People call them different things, but those are like the cards now, this kind of like shift or trend we see where you put table pack or host packets on the tables, and then people are just getting their, their table number and their bid number on like a little card and given to them. That's what I'm referring to. So I love making those in Canva because you can just print them as business cards, and it's like the easiest thing to print through Canva, and they come to you in like 3 to 5 days. So there's another tip if you make those, or you could use your local printer, of course, but it's just like a quick way to use it within Canva. So I love that as well, for sure. And as we're talking about leveraging resources, so we've talked a lot about technology, and I'm kind of going to put you all on the spot, but I'd love to hear about how you leverage your resources with vendors, because they're a key, part of the partnership. And I think whether that's with you all or with the client, so the nonprofit themselves, how you see them managing those relationships with vendors, I think those can be really, really key partnerships in making an event successful and maybe helping it make more money. So do you all have any examples on how we can work with vendors to leverage resources?
I'll jump in first because it's very top of mind now with a couple of fundraisers I'm currently working on, is to find vendors, whether they're the AV people, artists, performers, event planning companies, caterers that are aligned with your mission, at a minimum, not against your mission, but very much aligned with your mission, or have worked with you in years past and you've built that relationship and they understand what you're trying to achieve. There are times when you have to bring in someone new, and that's, these things happen, but when you can create a relationship that's long-standing and they just sort of understand, like, okay, here's what the auctioneer says. Oh, remember last year this worked. This process we wanted to switch up, or I love the way that the lighting did. Now we're in this new venue, but can you make this happen? That is really helpful. From a saving money perspective or maximizing money, it's two sides of the same coin. A lot of times, some of your vendors who are really invested in the relationship and the cause will definitely give you a discount. I don't think that's like you should go out asking for a discount. I found that a lot of them just offer them. And especially if you're a long-term partner, they just kind of give you more and more, or are willing to just add things that you didn't even ask for, just to make the event more impactful. And so that creates a better event, a bigger event, and then hopefully a more profitable one as well. And I just like working with people I like. That is also
yeah, I agree with what Jackie said. When you build those relationships with vendors, they do, a lot of them do offer that nonprofit discount, which is really key to the bottom line. Another way, and Mary and I kind of came up against this last year, where we both had an event in the same space back to back. And we didn't know it because, everybody's doing their thing. And, afterwards we talked about it and said, it would have been nice to be able to have known that, we were doing this event back to back, but because we thought it could have helped us with our AV costs, because AV was really, that was like the biggest expense that this organization had. And so, working with your partners in your community or in your field to really find out, what they may be doing, and see if you can actually, merge resources that way, and, hopefully get a little bit of a break when it comes to actually doing the event.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that example, because I totally forgot about that. And yes, it was like that would have helped everybody out a whole lot. So now we know. We'll text each other like, hey, when's your next event? But totally. And I think, like you all were saying, we and then also other vendors, that we learned so much the first year working together. So by year 2, everybody is just more locked in. They have experience with the event, and your time is more efficiently used. You have better ideas, I think a better service that's provided to you. So 100% totally agree. I would say a little bit contrary to what you said, Jackie, I think, is I would tell nonprofits to ask for discounts every single time, because the worst somebody can say is no. They might already be providing it like you were saying, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So I always tell them to ask every single time. We've gotten it many times. It's like, a 10% discount when they wouldn't have given it if we didn't ask. So you never know. But yeah, if it's a long-term partnership, that's probably something that need to be said.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, you should definitely ask, but depending on who the vendor is, right? If they're very, very much a small business, like they're like, I'm trying to give you the best deal I can. But if they're like a larger company, they're like, oh yeah, of course. But yes, asking is good. Expecting is not great though, right?
Yes,
so
100%.
Yeah,
love that. Great. All right. Well, we are going to move on to our next tip about another way that you can make more money at your event, which is ironically by maximizing your income. Obviously, we're talking about making more money, but we want to make sure that you actually have money left over from the event. So a positive return on your investment. So that's what we're talking about here. So DC, what are some effective strategies for leveraging partnerships and relationships to maximize income specifically for the events?
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought about when I brought up this question was, I'd spoken to a customer, a potential customer at that point, but and I said, who are your sponsors? What does your sponsorship look like? And they were like, oh, Jimmy, he makes a sign and we put it in his restaurant. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, how much does Jimmy pay to do this? And he was like, oh, he doesn't pay anything. And I was like, well, I understand, sponsorship can come in many forms, and, that's kind of more of advertising. And I was like, well, does anyone pay to help with putting on your event? And they were like, no, why don't we do that? And I was like, well, that's where sponsorship comes in. And so when I think of sponsorship, it's either an in-kind sponsorship where someone is actually providing you with a service that you don't have to pay for as an organization, or it's actually financial sponsorship where it's basically advertising on behalf of an organization that may align with your mission. And so, some of the examples for this can be, logo placement, on your website. We have this big thing coming up where we're going to have 500 people. Now, 500 people plus are going to be seeing your advertisement, your logo, your website. And these are people that are going to come to our event or are interested in our event. Some organizations offer speaking opportunities. You get that ability to be on a stage, talk about your product, talk about what it is you do, why you support this organization in front of these, like I said before, 500 people. That's key. That is real valuable real estate that people are really willing to pay, money to do. I have another organization that they pay, the top tier, and they actually get to hold part of the seminar, and that's 100% advertising with all of the attendees that they wouldn't have before. They have them, they have their attention now. And another way is to, build in some partnerships with brands that may also align with your organization. I do a fun run, and one of the ways to reach out, for an advertiser or a sponsor would be, I'm just going to say it's a fun run. And so an organization like, Brooks Running Shoes or Nike or someone along those lines may want to advertise, because now they have a whole community's attention on their brand. And so these are just some ways that you can really build those, joint ventures and, get that one-on-one attention to the sponsors. Let's see, what else do I have here? And like I mentioned before, the in-kind donations, that will also help with your bottom line.
I'm just going to jump in there if that's okay. Just to also say, you maximizing income and trying to save money where you can doesn't mean not spending any money, right? Because it's a lot of times that adage or the cliche or what that saying, takes money to make money is very true. What you want to do is really be strategic about where you're spending your money to make sure you have the best results. So whether it's like, okay, I know that auctioneer is going to do great. They really resonate with our crowd. He had to raise his rates or whatever it was, but it's worth it. Or that event planning company, they charge this, and boy, we could kind of do it ourselves. But it's not just a matter of saving you time by paying them to do it. It's like they have all this knowledge that then you can leverage and then make more back, and focus on the relationship building with the patrons of your organization, your sponsors, your volunteers. So just kind of keep that in mind too. Is like it's really a return on investment, and investment doesn't necessarily mean $0. It's just really trying to leverage that. Just wanted to add that in.
I love that.
I'm glad you said that, Jackie, because you do have to sometimes make money to spend money, or spend money to make money.
Yep, absolutely.
For sure. And this was making me think what you said earlier, DC, when you were saying like, you don't need to just have a bunch of items in an auction to like have a bunch of items. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are for both of you, if there's value for an organization to like diversify versus like simplify, because I think we are seeing a shift where people are only doing like a raffle, or their silent auction only has 10 items, like some simplification that's like going on. And so my question, I guess, is what do you think about that? Like, is there value in doing a bunch of small different things, or just simplifying overall? Because ironically, I feel like if you do too much, you may actually not make as much money because there's too many choices. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you kind of get into donor fatigue after a while, or supporter fatigue, when you do offer too much. It's just like, you're taking your kid to the candy store and say, you can pick anything you want. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff. And so I do feel that, kind of streamlining and really making it like concise, really, honing in on the things that are going to build the most impact, but also bring in the biggest rate of return. Like you said, people are going away from the big auctions, and as they should. But that doesn't mean you still can't have, some things that are available to people at any price range. So that's where the raffles come in, and that's where sometimes the golden ticket, or a buy it now for gift cards, just ways you want to give everyone the opportunity to give, whatever that looks like, but you don't need to have 200 items so people can choose things, because again, your volunteer time is important. When you have to spend that time and that energy to get those things, and you get a very minimal rate of return, you have to really ask yourself if it was really worth it.
Yeah. And just to tag on to that too, is, I've got clients who, and it's depending on the culture of the organization. We've got one which is an arts organization for Native American artists, and the artwork that they give to the silent auction is a huge component of their event. So they definitely want that silent auction. It's a big cultural component of their event. But I also have another one that just completely got rid of the silent auction. It's like, that is not what we are trying to do here tonight. We're trying to create a different type of environment. And what they did was actually change their ticket price. They wanted to have they wanted to have attendees. I'm trying to put this in a concise way without ChatGPT. They wanted to have their attendees be quite the ones who could really donate to the cause. So they were really focused on the fundraising component, limiting the number of live items, just so they're like the high impact. There wasn't sort of that auction, bidding fatigue, like, oh, we're on number 20. Okay, when are we going to be able to go home? But they raised their ticket price significantly, right? So that's going to price some people out, but their mission for that particular event had very definitive goals. Whereas other events, they want to make it something where the community can be a part of, and people can feel included. Like, I can bid on this gift card. I can't buy that $2,000 package, but I can like be there. I can be supportive. I can be I can raise my, bid number. I can, bid on different things in the silent auction and feel a part of it. So those are different types of missions or executions towards your mission, which is why what Mary said earlier, when you're doing your goals, is like, why will then determine how and what you actually do on site. So that's my thoughts there.
Yeah, and then I was thinking too, DC, you brought this up before, we've talked about this, but when you're looking through your budget and things like that and keeping all of that in mind, um, thinking through how much it costs to raise $1 is a really good
Mhm.
metric that I like to use. And so that's basically your expenses divided by your gross revenue. And so, for example, if you spend like $2,500 on your event, which I'm sure you're probably spending more, but let's say you spend $2,500 on your event and you had a gross revenue of $10,000, then your fundraising cost to raise $1 would be 25 cents. So you're spending 25 cents for every dollar raised, which is actually pretty good. That's a good amount. I would say many events aim, and I'm curious if you all have heard a different metric, but I think like 30 cents to raise $1 is really good. Like that's something that people kind of aim for. But I've been involved in events where it's closer, like it costs 60 cents to raise $1. And those are falling more in your fundraiser category because they're just not going to make as much money, but they might have a different goal. And so that's something I love putting at the bottom of a budget just because it kind of puts it into perspective a little bit more. So we're going to move on to our last section, post-event stewardship. And this is something that we can't forget to share about because it's the thing that often gets left on the wayside after an event. People are just ready to be over and done with it, and we get it. But Jackie, can you share what stewardship even is and why it's important after the event?
Yeah, sure. Stewardship is basically taking care of something that is very important to you, whether it's a relationship or a physical item, or a philosophy. So what I find to be really important here is everyone's exhausted. You're packing up, you've been going really hard, especially up to event day, game day. And at the end of it, a lot of times people are just like, okay, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to think about it. I just want to sleep for a few days. And that is actually the wrong approach. Get some rest for sure, but you need to go back and thank the people who were involved, whether it's first of all, the attendees and your organization want to know immediately, how much did we raise? Or how much did we profit? I usually like to use raise because that you don't necessarily have all the little costs back in at the end of the event. And that's always a bigger number, which is impressive. So you need to get that information out, take care of the people who were there, thank them, get your donor receipts out right away so they're not chasing you for it come, April the following year. Get your thank you notes out to anyone who donated an item, whether it was in kind or something for your organization. Thank your volunteers. Really make sure that to tell them why it was great that they were there and how valuable that is. And I think one of the ways that is missing, and I'm a big fan, which is why I put a picture here of an actual note card, is when you actually write something and send it to them one by one versus, in a big newsletter. Thanks to all the volunteers that made it that night. If you can have a volunteer write to the volunteers or get something heartfelt put together, it's going to go a lot further in making them feel connected and continuing want to engage with the organization throughout the year, right? So it's not like, hey, I'll volunteer for your big event, but then I just peace out the rest of the year and don't do anything. They're like, hey, I'd like to sign up to do something this quarter. How can I help? Or how can I, be of service to this organization? So just really taking care of those relationships and showing gratitude is incredibly important. So that's kind of my thinking about how stewardship's important. And also then you start planning for the next year, right? So, well, that's very important. Because when you think about, DC's laughing because we know, just because you're tired and you're like, how can we make it better? Oh, wow, our volunteers really love being part of this, or this really resonated with folks. Just keep those in mind, capture those, put it into your plan for the following year so they don't just go by the wayside. DC, do you want to add to that since you laughed?
I would love to add to that, Jackie. Thank you. Well, one of the things that I was thinking, sending those thank you notes is really important, but also, going through your list of attendees and pulling out people who may be first-time attendees, give them a call, go and have tea with them and find, learn about them and find out why, what made them want to come to your organization. Those high donors, even those low donors, people want to feel like what they're giving is important. And so reaching out to them, talking to them, really learning about why they're here, because even though, the event's over, you still have to cultivate those relationships, because that makes your lifelong donors want to stay around. So really reaching out and just, getting to know the people who are giving and why they're giving.
And that's not just the job of the development director. That is like for all different types of people within the organization to get involved with that part. Otherwise,
That's right.
person's really overwhelmed. Yeah.
I was going to say that too, Jackie. It's not just the person that's running that event. Stack that up way in advance. Who's going to help you post event, to write those thank you notes, to make those phone calls, to do the outreach, to pull those together. It does not have to be the person that was running the entire event. It really is much more holistic within the organization.
Yeah, and I have an organization that at the end of the event, they're still in this ballroom. They all sit down and sign the thank you cards in the ballroom. And they go out and you get them within the next couple days.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I love
Do you have
that.
a photo of that, DC?
Do you have a photo?
Yeah, of them signing the cards.
Yes, I do. I will send it to you.
Because she knows that's my follow-up question afterwards.
Yep.
Those are awesome tips. Thank you. Thank you all for those. Post-event stewardship should not be forgotten. And so I've definitely taken notes with what you all just said. I love that idea. So this then brings us to kind of the end of the main talking points that we wanted to cover. And so we're going to pass the time over for our last few minutes for Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask away, drop them in the chat.
I don't see any questions right here, but I will tell you one of the questions that comes up all the time in all of our webinars is all of our demos. You guys are talking about process during the event. On the front end, how are you filling the seats with the right people? I'm sure you guys can enlighten us on that.
Well, I think the first thing is determining who the right people are, right? Like what Mary said earlier, whether it's a fundraiser or a fundraiser that is very community involved, or whether you're like, we're just trying to bring in people who can write some really big checks because we need to move the needle. Determining that right off the bat is important. And donor development is a year-round process. It's not something you do right when you're ready to send out invitations for the event. Like, it's strategic, and it's something that the organization needs to make sure like their board of directors is really on board with, like being table captains, getting people passionate about the project, getting the date on the calendar right away, and starting that like well in advance, almost like right when that event's done. Again, I keep saying that like once it's done is when you start planning for the next one, because it's true, and making sure that they're very involved in that process, because it's not just the invitations go out and let's just see who shows up. That I have found to be an ineffective strategy for reaching your goals.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, reviewing your past attendee list is really going to be key. Seeing who came, who was involved, why. Again, meeting with those people, asking them their why is really going to be important, because some of those people become your ambassadors too. The word of mouth, the FOMO. I was there. You missed out. How, look at these pictures. I mean, that's another way to engage and activate your supporters. And I like what Jackie said too about getting people passionate about the project, knowing your why. Why do we want this particular group to be here? Is important. And it's not always just about the money. I mean, it really isn't. It can't be. It's really got to be like, again, back to the why and the mission, and filling those seats with the people that believe in your organization and want to spread the word about your organization.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said for sure. I always think like, just because someone doesn't know, like have experience with the organization, or they haven't attended the event before, doesn't mean they're not going to show up and give. Like, we just can't predict that about people. So I still like the idea of like inviting people, but to the point that everyone else was saying, I totally agree. So if you're doing a table captain model, which has its pros and cons, of course, but like really doing everything that you can to make sure that your table hosts can be successful, that they know what they're inviting to, we give them all the resources to be successful, so they can also help get the right people in the room. Even if that person might be new to the organization, they might know, well, hey, my friend is like into things similar to this, so they might really enjoy this. Like, that to me is a win, and I think would be something really helpful. And then to DC's point, talking about who attended last year, one thing I've seen someone do, which I think is just absolutely brilliant, is track during a live auction or something like that, who bids on an item, but they don't win it. They're like the second person, like the runner-up. And they were willing to donate that money. And so if you could track that and then make sure those people come back the next year, they may still be in a position to give and actually maybe win that item. So those are some additional thoughts.
Yeah, I like that.
Or you can just offer it up being like, hey, by the way, we could get you another one if you're willing to donate at that level. Right. Yep. Do that all the time at checkout. By the way.
That's a great tip. The other question that we get frequently is, my event did okay. Should we do it again next year? Can you talk about how these events grow monetarily with, in addition to the energy that they bring in? How I'm sure you see events grow from year to year. People will look at something and they're like, oh my God, they're making $1 million and we only made, 35,000. Are we ever going to get to that point? Perhaps. I mean, they've been running that for 50 years. They didn't just snap their fingers and make that million.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things too is, especially in light of, when everything kind of went to virtual event fundraising, during COVID, all those expectations, I think, got shuffled. One of the event is also an anchor point to bring awareness of your organization and what you do. Some of these much, much larger ones for very well-known organizations, they also become part of the social scene of the year, right? It's there could be professional athletes there, and they're they've been working on this gala for 20 plus years. It takes time, energy, and commitment to doing it. But again, the more people come, the more it becomes a great fun event for a great cause. You can go out with your friends, you're helping people. People just want to go, and that's how it takes time to keep growing it, to get that stickiness factor for attendees.
Yeah, and I'd say it really takes 3 to 5 years for an event to really take hold. And so, the first time it may have been fantastic, second time it may not. We're still trying to figure it out, and your supporters are still trying to figure it out. So I say don't give up, but also know that for those organizations that are raising the $1 million or raising the 550,000 or, whatever that number may be, just know that people have put in a lot of work to get that. And it is not raised in the night of the event. It's usually raised beforehand. And so, just know that it's, you may bring in, $50,000 on the night of, but what work did you do to get that $1 million, during the year? And so just know that it takes work. You can't, it's not just, raising your paddle, and it's not just having a cool live auction item. And so putting in that time and that energy before is going to make it more successful the night of. And again, it's going to build that brand awareness. So people are going to want to come back year after year. The rest of it is just glitz, it's the fun factor, the FOMO, the Instagrammable moments. Right. And so, yeah.
I love what you both said, and you took the words out of my mouth. So I'm just going to say, I agree. I
concur.
I concur. I super concur. Laurie, would it be appropriate for us each to kind of go around and share where folks can follow us and find us if they?
I was just going to ask you to do that, Mary.
Awesome. Okay. We have little slides, so I'll just have us, I'll go around. Oh, and I'm first. I didn't realize that, but I'll go first. So you can follow us on pretty much all social platforms at EP Events LLC. Our website's up there, epevents.org. Also, I have a podcast called Better Events Podcast. We talk about events. Sometimes I talk about fundraising. And so you could find us on all major podcast platforms as well. So that's me. Love to hear from you. And Jackie.
Yep, I've got my contact information up here as well. Tons more information available on our website. And if you have any questions or would like to get in touch, feel free to drop me an email. We can connect.
Yep, and you can, oh my gosh, that's tragic. You can find me at info at kindandcompanyevents.org. And I'm on all the Instagram and LinkedIn and all those as well. And yeah, we're happy to help anyway. If you just want to chat and run some ideas by us, I'm totally here for you.
Awesome. And each of these individuals are listed on the Octria Partners page, and they are there because they are incredibly kind and an amazing resource if you want to help elevate your auction and event fundraiser. If you want to take it to the pros and have them handle everything for you, you're in the right place. And you can hear from this conversation the way that they can elevate your event fundraiser, make more money, and take the stress off of you so that you can do the other pieces, working with your donors, working with your impact people, working on that video, and shift that over. Of course, they're extremely consultative and very kind and always offering up additional information. Follow them on their social media. They do post a lot, especially on the Instagram. I'm terrible with our Instagram, but I steal their stuff all the time and I repost it. So follow them on Instagram to get it before I do. That wraps us up at the top of the hour. I appreciate each and every one of you for joining us. I always wish everybody bids that soar. I hope you crush your fundraising goals. Mary, Jackie, DC, I'll give you guys the last word, though.
Thank you for having us, and please, please, please use Octria. It's just going to make your life so much easier and ours.
And I like to say thank you for having us, and make sure you build those relationships and tap into your community. People out there want to help you and support you reach your goal and be part of your organizations.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and happy fundraising.
Bye-bye.
Bye.